coming back into and allowing ourselves to rebuild the crystalline container that is specific and unique to each one of us. We're going back into a place of structural integrity, if you will, to where we can house the full embodiment and knowing of ourselves as this individual expression of source, having a human experience, therefore templating on a grander scale the ability for all of humanity to come back into what was always intended, which is to have this physical embodiment here on a third dimensional plane, housing that unique individual expression of source that we are, but always staying in full embodiment of pure unity consciousness, law of one, in full connection and communication with source.
Welcome to your awakening journey. Today's destinations include higher consciousness and actualized potential. If all ascenders could now please be seated in a comfortable meditative posture, we're about to ascend. You are now arriving at your host, Brian Henry.
What is up, Ascenders? Welcome back to the Awaken podcast, a show on which we have expansion, invoking conversation to assist you and our planetary consciousness in ascending to higher planes of consciousness, purpose, and potential. This is the ascending journey on which you are awakening to who you really are, and simultaneously becoming who you wish to be. My name is Brian Henry. I'm the founder of Together We Ascend and the Ascend Academy over at togetherweascend.com and your host of the show. Someone really wanted this to happen. This collaboration, this conversation that you're about to hear was all beautifully and divinely orchestrated. A couple months ago, I came across a live stream given at the Flower of Life Expo. And on this day, I took down note of Brooklin Rain's name with the intention of reaching out to her to connect and perhaps someday have her on the Awaken podcasts. This reminder ended up falling to the wayside for a little bit until a few months later, I came across this note again and I saw it and I saw Brooklyn's name. At this point, I didn't really have the intention of reaching out. But when I saw her Facebook profile pop up on this very same day, I took this as a sign that it was time to. So I went ahead and sent her a message, letting her know I had an interest in connecting. And if that wasn't synchronistic enough, the response that I got from Brooklyn a day later was on the same day that I messaged her, wanting to connect. She saw a post shared by someone on her Facebook of a live stream for the Awaken podcast, and she thought to herself that she felt a great deal of resonance with my energy. And on the same day that I reached out to Brooklyn for the very first time, she had taken note of my name with the intention of reaching out to me. I say it again. It's all beautifully and divinely orchestrated. And I am willing to bet and think that you're going to feel the same once you tune into this episode, because the depth of awareness and the power of the information that this being shares with us and has been sharing with me over these past few weeks of getting to know her and connecting with her is going to invoke in you a sense of expansion, a sense of activation, the activation of your divine crystalline blueprint. We are restoring a knowing that we have always meant to be in. the knowing that we are all unique, individuated expressions of one source consciousness. And as we bring this knowing into a fuller embodiment within these physical vessels as human beings, as we restore our original divine blueprint, we too will become greater and greater expressions of what we really are. And it's to support you in this process, in restoring your original divine blueprint and bringing through the unique essence that is you, that this conversation has come together for. So if you're ready, why don't we jump into this interview and this conversation that I have with Brooklin Rain. I hope you enjoy it. I think I received insight into that pause that you experienced, that blank. I do believe that was the jumpstart point for a conversation that I am going to put up on the podcast.
Okay.
If you're open to it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay, so let's keep it going. I mean, The way that I usually like to do this is the exact same the way that we've been connecting all this time, just the types of conversations that I personally feel a sense of upliftment in, that's driven by my personal curiosity. And I know that you bringing through all the power and gifts that you're bringing through just is going to support the all on more than one level. One being what you were describing earlier, the energy that just gets put out there with an exchange like this happening. But I do think there's people out there that would enjoy hearing what you have to share as well.
Well, then let's do whatever this is your, wheelhouse.
This is us, sister. This is us.
I just show up.
That's all you need to do. And you've been showing up.
Every single thought that we have, every single action that we take, every single word that we speak affects every single aspect of the hologram. And so, that's really been kind of stripped away from the collective knowingness, people from the human consciousness, from people hear like, oh, the ripple effect, but it's just become this sort of, nonchalant, very watered down, dumbed down thing, right? And yet, so, but the more and more and more we allow ourselves to bring in our oversoul technology and to expand, our levels of conscious awareness, the more such knowledge and wisdom of that, that we are so intertwined and interconnected, and someone we hear all the time, like entangled, right? The quantum entanglement. I mean, in every cell of water, in every molecule of water, in every cell of our body holds the entire Earth's Akashic records, right? So that kind of brings it into a very, like, that kind of just expands and really blows out that whole connection with the statement and the knowing that everything is so interconnected, right? So, like, anything that we discuss or that comes through, or is always, yes, sometimes there's specific codexes and things that are meant for you in this now moment that are going, that are very purposeful as part of your bringing in more of your, your overall divine puzzle, and into embodiment. Yet it's really rippling out to every single thing in existence.
And like, I think it's an acknowledging the degree to the effect that is having. allows us to do it more consciously.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. There's so many things that are coming in, and the guides are coming in so like in such a bigger way to emphasize that, and not to create contraction or or to feed any self-judgment programming or ever, obviously, right? Or any of the guilt and shame programming, because as we know, those frequencies are of the lowest vibrational frequencies. I mean, scientifically proven, in fact, with different instruments, right? So never to do that, which is what happens a lot of times when they bring that in. We think, oh man, you know, it almost puts you into this place of like, oh, I don't want, I'm afraid
Scared
to
that you might do wrong. Yeah.
I'm paralyzed. I don't want to think, you know, and it's like, no, of course not. But, you know, and the more we allow ourselves to, you know, to show up and to release the layers of which no longer serve us, the densities, the polarities, you know, integrating the polarity, bringing home the soul fragments, bringing home the gifts and the wisdom, right? But releasing that, you know, those densities, dense vibrational frequencies and stuff we've accumulated, then the more we, you know, we clear and clean our lens of perception, and, you know, and the more we can allow ourselves to be in that space to where we are consciously aware and are in this sort of grander positioning or seat of conscious awareness, to where we can be that master orchestrator, right? And like, okay, that's coming
master
through.
Orchestrator.
Yeah, they always show picture, which I think is so funny, of the Wizard of Oz.
That one came up last time too.
Yeah, I thought so. It's come up with, you know, but it's, you know, it's sort of thinking about, you know, the seed point of your eternal self, which lies, for me, they always show it as like the center point being in your upper heart chakra, right? The you know, the kind of the atom seed of your existence, the aspect of your eternal self that is sort of like a computer chip that, you know, and you bring it down and you load it into this human suit and this human avatar that we are. And, you know, and from that place, the more we connect with that, the more we, you know, clear away these layers of third dimensional density, you know, the clearer, you know, our whole vehicle and container becomes, and the more that center point of our beingness can shine, you know, and radiate its light and its frequencies without, you know, bumping into all this other minutia and this stuff that we've, you know, and minutia would not be a great word actually, because obviously every single bit of that density was very purposeful and helpful in our ability to expand into a greater awareness of ourselves as, you know, as source. Yet, I think you know what I mean. And so they show, like, as now making that reference with Wizard of Oz, now they kind of bring us into that center point, that beautiful diamond crystalline sort of lotus point within us. And that is sort of, you know, the wizard. that's representative of the wizard, you know, of Oz. And then all around that, right? Everything that exists around that in that quantum heart coherence is, you know, is the playground of our existence.
Wow, what beautifully, but I absolutely love that. The other thing I want to point out is I think like the way that you communicate verbally, with physically as well, with gesture, there's something really powerful there, and like, I don't know, there's something that's being communicated there very effectively, I think. Just seeing, I was taking notice of that. I wasn't just listening, but I was really observing how you're communicating with body language. And I think there's something to be said about the way that it describes that sense of expansion and clearing. Like, I just want to point out that I do believe there's something being delivered there as well. That's really powerful.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I feel it. I feel, well, and two, they, when they bring you, or when I'm being taken into the imagery of it, and the energy of it, it's like, boom, it's here, right? Because everything is here in existence in this now moment. So when we bring our focus and awareness into that, right, then it becomes instantaneously palpable. It's right here. We're in that,
Yeah.
We're in that.
And I'm also feeling as though it's because you're so open and clear that it's just more is being expressed through you and manifesting again as that body language. Because what I'm feeling into right now is when I'm in a higher energy and I'm more present and I'm feeling more alive, I do tend to have a little bit more of that coming forth. So it's something to be attentive to. How much are we allowing the entirety of our energy to be expressed really?
Yes, totally. And two, what they like to bring in is that, and this is not to run specialness, because every single being in existence is equally special, is equally as profound, is equally as important, is equally as beautiful and meaningful and amazing, right? And what they're saying is, because of the journeys that we've chosen to take, obviously very different, yet quite a few parallels, and the advanced technology, crystalline, sort of this diamond sun technology that we came in with, when we, meaning you, Brian Henry, and Brooklin Rain, are getting together here and having an exchange, the vibrational connection field is hugely expansive, and it creates even more of an opportunity for exactly what you just said, to truly come and sort of like into that connection with your eternal creator self, and access a lot more, it's just a very clear field and streaming of communication and light and There's never one reason for anything that takes place. There's always so many little threads of purpose that run through any experience that we have. And the more we go in and kind of open up our, faith, trust, and surrender, and come from that center point of our beingness, coming from the heart complex, the eternal wisdom, and then even more add to it that, that childlike curiosity and that pure innocence and neutrality, not going into judge and to scrutinize and to, and to put something into a frame or a category, but kind of going in, just kind of floating into the experience and saying and exploring all the infinite potentials that, were meant to be experienced and explored through that experience manifesting, because there's so many different facets and different purposes to what took place there, and just depending on whatever is in your field and my field and the field of those who will potentially, maybe engage in this conversation is to some degree is why we're exploring this one facet of it or this one thread of it, right? The overriding of that, that's the thinking mind, that's the self-doubt, the negating of the infinite miracles that are constantly manifesting and taking place around us every single second of the day. There's so many magical things.
So beautiful, so beautifully stated. So going deeper into the many facets of purpose that each and every one of these manifestations are imbued with, and there's a way that you're describing it there that brings us to a space of curiosity, but detachment, and like not wrestling for, not feeling like there's something missing in this now. I mean, it becomes a very tricky space to guide someone into, but yes. I want to describe that more fully.
I'm like a little kid. I'm like, do you see me over here? I'm like raising my hand. I don't even.
You know what? As soon as I see that, I'm just going to stop talking and let it happen.
No, please don't. It's just so, I mean, there's just so much joy that's coming from this co-collaboration that it's like the little, that childlike joy within me is like, oh my gosh, like, because what you're saying is exactly what was just coming in from the guides. So you're totally channeling, and we're telepathically connecting and communicating, which is so exciting. Yeah, I think what they're saying.
Favorite types of interactions.
Yeah, because I think what they're saying is it can feel sort of like, ooh, how do we even go in there? And this is one of those times when as humans, even though there's so many intricacies to the interwovenness, if you will, of this massive holographic existence, sometimes there are these really beautiful and astounding, simple, foundational wisdoms and divine truths that we can apply. And that's here what they're saying is the most profound and expansive way to enter into such a space is just through that mastery of the present moment awareness and neutrality. When we're truly embracing neutrality, we can then see, and we're able to keep ourselves in that flow and that space of neutrality. That's where we can see and explore and continue to, like they're showing us sort of swimming in this infinite spectrum and pool of possibilities that could come from only one, that comes from simply, let's say, even just seeing that indigo light. When we don't try to box it into a linear construct and through the mind and say, well, this is what it was and this is what it, and we continue to allow it to expand and continue to just explore it, and allow it to communicate to us and bring forth everything that it's wanting to come through. Then, in that space of neutrality is where we can understand to a greater degree and I make up words all the time,
for good reason.
Infinitesimalness of existence, right? Like that's when we can really connect to the fact that nothing was ever meant to be put into such a small box or into logic, so to speak.
Yeah.
You
said it. I think this is a phrase that I have to repeat. Allow it to communicate to us.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That phrase right there, I think, is there's certain times where we'll frame it in a way, phrase it in a way that it sinks in, and you really integrate it. That did it for me. Allow it to communicate to us. And I guess what I'll say is that may manifest as a conceptually. It might manifest as something that we can think of conceptually, but don't limit it to that.
Yes. And that's beautiful. And so I love that you said that, because we are here having a third dimensional human experience. And so many of us who are gathered in this, space of here and now, are meant to help to bridge the, bridge that awareness, bridge the ability to, from this third density into our higher architecture of our, of our multiversalness, if you will. So, in that, there are many times every single day where, yes, let's freeze frame this, so to speak, put the video of infinite existence on pause, freeze frame that, and bring that down into this, into a more tangible expression of linear communication, because that's what's appropriate in this exchange between this person here and myself in this now moment. That's that freeze frame and that fragment of, infinite exploration and existence is what is required right now to sort of as the key to open up whatever's meant to happen, in the next moment for myself, that person, and everybody else in the quantum field in some way, shape, or form, right? So, there's nothing negative about wrong, right, about interacting with information and consciousness in that way. It's that if we only do it in that particular way, there's nothing wrong with that either. That's our choice, and that's what we're choosing here to. Yet there's a grand calling, taking place right now for these other sort of windows and gateways of consciousness to come in and, kind of open it up.
Yeah, so it's honoring that while still maintaining the higher awareness.
Yeah.
Now, one of the questions that come to mind is, where does asking questions have a place in this?
Well, I think that's part of the childlike curiosity, right? It's that you're creating, if the questions, and I to some degree, and there's always the interplay of both, until there's not, but for most, there's the interplay of the mind, and the heart complex. And there is always meant to be an interplay and in human physical form of the mind and the heart. But yet, as we know, it's become grossly imbalanced and also, sort of tapped into this larger sort of collective mental iCloud of distortion, right? So the more and more, we come into our center point of our beingness through that heart complex that was earlier pointed out, sort of our own personal expression of the wizard. The Wizard of Oz, which is still laughing at that, they're bringing that in. But, the more and more we come from that as the center point and hub of our communication, and allow the questions, to kind of flow from there, because that center point is the 0 point of existence. That center point is the ultimate sort of seat, if you will, within your consciousness of neutrality. So when you're in that place and you're exploring from there, the questions that are coming from that pure childlike curiosity and that felt sense of neutrality and exploration to know yourself, as more, right? As more of this expression of source. I think if we get stuck into the line of questioning that comes from the consciousness traps of that bigger mental matrix, that iCloud of collective distortions, right? When we're concentrating the questions and the things, from there, we're basically boxing, we're not allowing for the full potential of what could be unearthed, if you will, which is a strange term to bring in, but kind of also very appropriate. So having the harmonization and the sort of the divinely intended use or application of our blueprint, which is, yes, as a human incarnate, the mind is part of the human condition. Having some of that line of questioning and inquiry stemming from that, but kind of coming through and being expressed out from this more, quantum coherence of your heart field and that, in that place. And that's when you can, I feel like, really explore.
Open up to more.
Yeah. And of course, that's not to negate all the other energy centers and crystalline technologies that lie within our system. Of course, that, so much of it comes from our womb chakra and our connection with ourselves in that creative energy, right? And knowing that, we have a desire to create more and to explore more of that which we are. So from that womb center, shoots up this brilliant energy and this, sort of clarion call to the heart and to the rest of our, technologies that lie within our chakra systems. And so it's an interplay, in other words, that is more expansive than just the human construct of the mind and the heart. But they're focusing on those two places in this exchange because there's such a palpable distortion that's taken place through the evolution of humanity to override our awareness of that center point of our existence and the wisdom of all that is kept within each and every one of us, which is why so much of our journey of being stuck in this reincarnation wheel when choosing to come into this earth plane, why so much of the journey is being run through this mental complex, this distortion programming, and that's and since our beliefs and our thoughts, which then lead to like a bigger sort of energy beacon within our field, it then becomes a belief. Those beliefs are what have, allowed us to sort of remain in this sort of thick webbing of the veils of illusion, and allowing us to think that we need to go outside of ourselves to know the answers to things, or, where when we access from this point, all of that appears or shows up as though it's outside of ourselves, really there's this greater knowingness that it is within us and that we are a part of all of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're not looking upon it as being outside of yourself at that point. Right.
Even if you are viewing it through, whether it's your third eye technology, or your eyes as being separate, you're coming through here, so you're feeling it, and when you're coming from that place, then there's this knowingness that we're not separate of that.
And then I think the awareness, the perspective from that state is looking upon it as a means to discover more about ourselves. And when you come from that perspective of I'm experiencing this reality that is me, as a means of expansion, I think that's going to just fuel that sense of expansion even further.
I don't know if you're having a physical, palpable experience right now of the heart chakra.
Oh yeah.
It's like there's it's become this cavernous, infinite portal right now. I mean, it always is, but it's like as this is unwinding, as this transmission and codex is coming through, it's like there's this really vibrant warmth within the heart complex, and it's like, you know, it feels like an out-of-body experience, very grounded within the body, if that makes any sense.
It feels like it makes sense.
Yeah.
The feeling is what makes sense of it. I haven't felt this before, but I've felt enough in the past to know what activation feels like. So I want to thank you again, Brooklyn, over and over again. You'll probably hear me express my gratitude for just, again, the sort of expansion that you invoke in me. But I'm super looking forward to having all of this being shared with whoever is in this now moment here listening to it with us, because I can already feel them, and I can already feel them expressing their gratitude for you and what it is you've been sharing.
Oh my goodness. Well, I feel like we're mirroring that in each other right now. I have a tremendous amount of gratitude as well. And I'm just really so grateful for the co-creation and connection field that is formed when we meet. It's, you know, brilliantly expansive and divine.
It truly is. And then I guess to add to that, when it came into my awareness that, you know, okay, this is something we're going to share, I felt like an even greater spark because I think what happened there, this is how it's coming into me now, all the people that are now going to be hearing this tuned in and started bringing their energy to it as well. So there's this even new level of elevation in knowing that this is going to be contributing to something greater than just my personal journey.
Yes, for sure. And as you're talking too, many different guidance is, you know, flooding in collectives. And I think on the forefront of that is the Council of Light, this 12th dimensional Council of Light that is, you know, this conglomeration, if you will, of you know, many multiversal consciousness. And, you know, they're just, they're happy that they were here to assist in holding the container for us. So.
Gratitude for them as well. The 12-dimensional Council of Light.
Yes.
I take it this is not a council that you're new to.
Thankfully, no. And I doubt that it's a council that you're new to either, but maybe just haven't, you know, recognized them as this title, so to speak. Yeah. And they're not. I'm
curious to hear more about what you can share about them.
Sure. What in particular would you care to know?
I'm open to hearing anything. Just general curiosity. What has your experience been with them?
Yeah, so, you know, I feel extreme gratitude in that.
Who are they? Sorry. That's a better jumping off point.
So they are many, and to you know, to define them individually would be nearly impossible, as they are a whole collective, you know, a collective of consciousness with the intention of many intentions, but the intention that they kind of bring to the forefront of this particular experience here now is their intention to assist humanity on levels of you know, bringing in the capabilities of grander grace and ease within the ascension process. And so, and also of not only humanity, but all beings that exist, you know, within and on and around, Sophia Gaia, Mother Earth. So, yes, there are, they can step forth as a one voice or an individual, and, perhaps, now they're showing, an aspect of Krishna stepping forward, and so within this collective, there are many masters and beings that we can relate to here, and, within our sort of, wheelhouse of the limited scope of knowingness of the masters that have existed and have been part of the overall experience of Earth throughout space and time. And yet there are beings and aspects and fragments of an infinite amount of light beings that come in to create the expression of this consciousness. And so, they're working to do lots of grid work and alignment to create further accessibility for humanity and all of its beings and elements, etc., to come back into alignment with their own individual expression of their divine blueprint, and also this fuller connection and direct sort of communication without any interference with source. So that would be a very generalized, because of course there are very specific things that are carried out in every now moment that they are here to do and assist with.
So I do feel like that that little introduction there came forth for a very important reason. And I personally will sum it up with saying, recognizing that we have assistance and support around us, a great deal of it, and being open to receiving that support and connecting to that, knowing it's always there. I know more and more people are feeling inspired to experience that support more tangibly, more consciously. So I think many can benefit from hearing that, that support is there. And if you wish to, if you choose to, we can connect to that in ways that it becomes experienced more fully. So I'm glad we brought that up. Now I do want to bring it back to some stuff that, well, it's actually, you kind of segued into it because it was an idea that I had to jump into earlier. And I want you to start with saying or describing what you mean by original divine blueprint.
Sure. So when that term comes into play, our linear thinking minds want to kind of take us oftentimes, not everybody, but oftentimes takes us to this, to this concept, right, of, there's this blueprint that, we all were at some point in time. And now we desire, and part of this ascension process is to go and reconfigure that exact blueprint that, that we came in as, right? And so what they'd like to say is that could never be. They use that term original divine blueprint so that in our linear constructs, we can sort of have something to hold on to as a reference point, and as an idea of the returning back to what once was, right? Yet we could never, in the expansive infinite journey of who we are as an individual expression of source, always evolving and expanding and ascending, no matter where we, are choosing to focus our life force energy and wherever we're experiencing our dimensional existence, right? We would never be able to return back to a state of, we could go back and revisit it through our Akashic records. We could review the experience of what once was within a particular frame of our existence, yet we would never want or desire, as this infinitely expanding creator being, to strip away all that has taken place in between when we were in this state of our original divine blueprint, right, to this now moment. Because all of that, every single moment, every single experience that's been had is divinely and purposely orchestrated and co-created along with Source. And so, what they really mean by this is that creating our ability to, as a human collective, coming back into and allowing ourselves to rebuild the crystalline container that is specific and unique to each one of us. It could never look the same for any two individuals, because we are an individual flicker of Source that flickered off into the manifestation of a light. And in that light, we are not separate of any other flickering that came off of Source to experience itself as an individual expression, right? Yet we are in fact individual expressions, because each of those flickers has had its own journey and its own expressions and its own, experiences of itself as an individual expression. So when we talk about, coming back into this divine original blueprint, it's not original in that we're going back to something that we once were and negating all of these experiences. It's that we're going back into a place of structural integrity, if you will, to where we can house the full embodiment and knowing of ourselves as this individual expression of Source, having a human experience, therefore templating on a grander scale the ability for all of humanity to come back into what was always intended, which is to have this physical embodiment here on a third dimensional plane, experiencing ourselves as a separate physical form, housing that unique individual expression of Source that we are, but always staying in full embodiment of pure unity consciousness, law of one, and in full connection and communication with Source. And throughout space-time and the history of Earth, there's been a lot of fragmentation and skewing and manipulation of this crystalline vehicle that was always intended to be intact for us. And because of that distortion and genetic manipulation, etc., there was a massive falling in the levels of consciousness, and we forgot ourselves as individual expressions of God having a human experience. And we began to believe that we were separate of Source and that we were separate of one another. And this was largely due to the fracturing and fragmentation and skewing of this divine blueprint, this crystalline structure that housed our multi-dimensional knowingness of that which we are, pure Source. And so every single person who's incarnated here, is going to bring forth their own unique expression and sort of construction, if you will, of their crystalline original divine blueprint. Yet the common thread amongst all of these structures is that it is a vehicle to embodying and housing our I Am Presence and heaven on earth, so to speak, and our true, unfiltered, unfragmented, unskewed, direct communication link to Source and knowing ourselves as Source. That makes sense.
That's about the most elaborate description of the ascension process that I've ever heard.
And that I just wanted to mention is this massive collective of Christ consciousness stepping forward, along with this, these other collectives of light. The 12th dimensional Palladians, ancient Palladians are part of this transmission as well at this particular point in our co-creation here.
So it's fun to know who's here with us.
Yes, sometimes they won't, they don't differentiate, or it doesn't, it's sort of like, it's just, free flowing. It's a co-collaboration, of bringing in, and then other times they'll, step forward to show who they are.
Why?
And I knew you were they're already answering that for you. Because those that are going to feel a resonance and magnetized to engaging and listening in this transmission are going to have specific codexes and frequencies that are going to help them to bring in their soul fragments from their previous, either previous timelines and Akashic history with those particular collectives and not separate of, their greater purpose of who they are and why they're here.
And I think that's exactly why they're choosing to tune in.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, let me actually take a pause so that I'm not rushing into anything. How do we go about this process of restoring our original divine blueprint? And then also maybe if you want to tie in there, the term crystalline always fascinates me. I just want to hear more about what that's pointing us to.
Sure. Okay. So I think every single person's homecoming, if you will, of this original divine blueprint shows up uniquely to them. Yet, generally speaking, if someone's intention is to, okay, I'm connecting, I'm resonating with this makes sense, there's just a cellular knowingness that this is what I'm here, this is what I'm meant to do in this now time, is to bring focus and awareness upon, the reinstallation of my divine technology, right? This divine blueprint. It really can be simplified, which is beautiful, in that the more we, in our whatever way we choose, whatever tools we decide to use, but the more we show up for ourselves each day, as many times as we can, right? And ask to come back into our full divine presence. The more we show up, whether in meditation or breath work or, in whatever forms those present, and ask to release all that no longer serves us, surrendering with full faith, trust, and surrender that even if we don't have the specific knowing in that moment, what exactly is the first priority of releasing, just surrendering and knowing when you show up with that intention, that's exactly what's going to take place. Source, your higher self, your oversoul technology knows exactly how to prioritize what the first level of density or self-limiting beliefs or patterns that are ready to release. So, the more we just surrender into that knowingness that when I show up in whatever way of this coming into this sort of the center point into the now moment, and I choose and I ask through my intention to release all that no longer serves me, past, present, future, throughout all space and time and dimensions, and in place of it, you call in your divine blueprint, your I am presence, your pure God essence in whatever form that it chooses to come through. For me, when I began this journey of awakening, I heard this voice, and the voice said, it's time to meditate. And I know I've shared this with you before, Brian, and it was through that meditation and that connection with the sacred consciousness and intelligence of breath and the power of intention, focused thought and desire, right? And the intention of releasing all that no longer served me. And at that point in time, and calling in this divine light, this divine peace that passes all understanding, that's exactly what began to happen. I became more aware of emotional patterns and self-limiting beliefs and things that had been playing out. Mm-hmm. And through the breath and through my intention and through the practice of meditation, more and more density was melting away and more light was coming in. And so essentially at the time, that was my awareness of what was taking place. And it was perfect and beautiful and purposeful. And the more and more I showed up in that way, which then led to more people synchronistically showing up through the law of attraction, and more tools showing up to meet me where I was on my journey, the more and more I began to expand my conscious awareness, the more and more I began to clear out that, the densities and sort of all these frequencies of that were creating a lack of clarity, if you will, within my structure, right? And now, here in this conversation, answering the question of how do we bring in more of our divine blueprint? Well, that's a great, that's how we do it. In whatever way, we can, releasing, the density, bringing home the fragments of self that were fractured off in whatever experience created the density, and bringing home those fragments for bringing home the wisdom of what we experienced, right? And knowing our role and knowing ourselves that we are not a victim of our circumstance, yet an eternal creator being choosing different experiences to experience the polarity of that which we are, pure divine light. And so the more we engage in this way, and the more we come into that full embodiment of knowingness of all of this that's being shared now, this divine blueprint, this crystalline nature, these strands of DNA that were thought to be non-existent, have all been awaiting within our cellular water and our cellular structure for us to call in the light and call in, our I am presence to illuminate and rebirth within us this divine blueprint, waking it up, coming back into the embodiment. So what does crystalline mean? Crystalline there's many ways to describe it, and I think the way they'd like to bring it into this is that, in the fragmentation and the skewing and then the creation of the reincarnation wheel and this very dense physical experience that we've had as humans over the last several thousands and thousands of years, in that we've become what we've, okay, they're backing up. Wow, they're bringing in a lot. Okay, so when we first were seeded as a consciousness as a consciousness of humanity, the Divinians are stepping forward now, which is a collective that was very much instrumental in the planting, the seeding of humanity. So when we were first, when the desire source to, and many different multidimensional beings and collectives to create the expression of source in way of humanity. We weren't physical form at that point. The first sort of manifestation, if you will, of humanity was more in the form of sort of this geometric light, right? These individual expressions of geometric light, which this is part of our divine blueprint. So they're getting a little bit, technical now. So, then as this was experienced and the experience was explored and then there was a calling in for even more of a physical experience, knowing that it would be this denser experience. And so with the interplay of the elemental properties of Gaia that were seeded in advance of humanity. And so, so then we began to come into, human flesh. And we were still, at this point, very much intact with our crystalline nature. We were much less dense than we are now. We didn't have the carbon-based structure that is currently, existent within our.
And this is describing the body, right?
Yes,
the experience of the body.
The experience of the body. We were much more light. There was much less density to the human form at that point. Mm-hmm. And it's very complicated. So, and I know you know this, and probably many that are listening do as well. There's much more to this Akashic history. And in this time of ascension and massive transparency and disclosure, more and more of that's being brought forth. This is a series of probably 5 years of conversation and unraveling. But to simplify it, through other collectives and beings that came in and desire to experience in some way, or bring the experience of the human form and the human consciousness and the human structure into their planetary experience. They began to manipulate, skew, and fragment and do different sorts of genetic tampering, if you will, or experiments that, and then there was lots of other things that with, the egoic construct and power and all sorts of things that came into play. And as a result, humanity fell lower and lower and lower in their levels of consciousness because their DNA, and our DNA holds the access to our levels of consciousness. This 12-strand DNA that we're meant to all have as part of our divine blueprint was fragmented and skewed and manipulated, whereby creating these lower dimensional planes of consciousness, and whereby allowing for humanity to experience themselves as separate of source and separate of one another. And so as we call in now that everything is moving, the planet herself, Sophia Gaia, is positioning herself in a different planetary alignment. There's a this is a full-on, every being, every, consciousness that exists within Gaia is now presented with the opportunity for ascension. So as we are asking, how can we bring in and reinstall more of our divine blueprint? It's by calling in the light. It's, calling in more of our I am presence, calling in more of our divinity, calling in more of that peace, love, joy, and all those high vibrational frequencies that are a part of our divine birthright. And now it just so happens that everything is syncing up in its alignment, and with the assistance of these collectives and beings, to where we can do that. We can bring that in. We can embody more and more of that, whereby increasing our levels of conscious awareness, whereby creating more of this knowingness of ourselves as this multidimensional, multiversal being that has dropped down for just a spark in time, right, into this human suit. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, it was. So just to kind of reiterate and, reemphasize, this planetary alignment that we're shifting into is allowing for more light to come in.
Oh, yes. And whereby when this massive fall in consciousness took place several thousands of years ago, and a lot of destruction and tampering and sort of rerouting of these massive stargates and portals that allowed us to access a more fluid communication with the different universal systems that exist, around us. There was sort of this closing off, which I'm sure all of you have heard about at this point, of our connection with the universal time matrix and the source, the higher source grid system, in an effort to sort of prevent, because we're not separate of anything in all of existence. So to the earlier point in the conversation of the ripple effect, it was to the great detriment of many within scope of existence to be experiencing the depths of warring and polarity and lower vibrational frequencies.
When was this linear in linear time?
So they drop in, because they're like, there's going to be a question for this. They drop in somewhere between, the beginning of this around, I feel like they're saying, between 45,000 linear years ago to 70,000 linear. But yet there were different, this is where it becomes quite complex. There were, there's so many timelines that are playing out simultaneously at once. So there are different expressions of existence.
There's no one answer.
They're correct. But what they're saying is the most succinct answer to what the overall energy hologram of what is here in existence right now and that we're bringing in is that of that time frame, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So, yeah.
To what degree does this information truly serve us? And the reason why I bring that up is because I've seen individuals having this fixation on the history to a point where it feels like it doesn't serve us. It becomes this us versus them mentality, and that just perpetuates the sense of separation. So I'd just like to hear you speak to how we can, or how we should approach that.
Yes, absolutely. So, it was always intended for us to have full access to every single thing within our Akashic history and within the Akashic history of all existence. And there's, yet when these certain falling from grace, so to speak, took place, it was decided upon by various councils of light and galactic councils that it may not be in the highest and best interest of these certain collectives that are choosing to have this very polarized and sort of darker expression of existence to have full scope of the Akashic records. It was seen that they weren't choosing to adhere to the law of one, and to respecting that no one is separate, no consciousness is separate, right? And so this information is never brought in to create fear or to create a greater sense of separation. It's simply brought in because it's our divine birthright to have a full understanding of what has taken place. And so it's never brought in to say this is the truth, and and every single being that is experiencing this transmission and this sharing of information is meant to this is it. It would never, they would never impose that upon us, because even though they're existing in higher planes of dimensional existence, they are they would like to emphasize that they do not have any hierarchy over us. They are not better than us, more special than us. That's a very linear concept, and something that has been part of this separation technology, right? And so we would never be able to ascend to the depths of ascension that we all, in some way, shape, or form, desire, if we were to ever take this information that is being offered and to respond to it with the same energetic frequencies that created this piece of Akashic history to begin with, which would be separation, warring, fear, anger, frustration, revenge. And so, yet it's our choice to determine what we do with this information, right? Because we are infinite creator beings, and we are co-creators. Yet they bring this in here for a grand opportunity for us to understand and to give us a sense of empowerment, of remembering who we are, and to understand that through our embodiment, through our showing up for ourselves and bringing in more of our divinity and our access to these higher levels of consciousness that we are, we then are more capable of coming from this place of the neutral observer, from the present moment, from neutrality. And in this neutrality is where we can see in a full scope and full lens everything for what it truly is. And in this state of neutrality, we're not responding from our emotional densities that we've accumulated and our self-limiting beliefs that we've accumulated through this experience, because those we've chosen to clear out, and we bring more of our fragments of our higher self and oversoul in, right? And so the more and more we do this, the more and more we can see that this is a grand opportunity for the collective of humanity to move beyond this spiral ring, this continuum that we are on in the spiral ring of existence, by responding differently than we have in the past. By seeing this information as simply that, this is what has taken place. And then from co-creating in this now moment in a place of pure neutrality, to manifest that which we've always desired, which is unity consciousness, law of one, and knowing ourselves as pure expression of source. So we all have a choice to determine how we want to respond to this. There's a lot of pain that is triggered within people, whether they're consciously aware of where it's coming from or not. It's imprinted in their cellular carbon-based DNA. The cataclysms that have taken place through time, whether it's, some of the bigger ones that we all hear about, the Lemurian Holocaust, the Atlantean Holocaust, the Essene Holocaust, the Lyran, Syrian, where whatever it is, it's being triggered. So it's only in that place of present moment, neutral mastery, that we could ever be able to feel those things coming in and realize that it's just a calling out for us to release, and an invitation for more of our homecoming. And so that would be the greatest encouragement to those who feel a sense of anger and frustration. It's honor those emotions that are coming up, because they're a part of your Akashic experience, whether it's ancestral, whether it's the collective, whether it's your own personal. Honor them, but try, if possible, from here, not from diving into the portal and the wormhole of that which has taken place. Not diving into the energetic, experience of those cataclysmic timelines, but witnessing them from this place of neutrality, knowing that you're having a physical and emotional response because somewhere within your cellular imprint lies densities and traumas that are calling out to be released, and releasing those and bringing home the soul fragments and the superpowers, I like to call them, and divine gifts that were left behind in those experiences, so that you can be that beacon of divinity that holds the space for our collective to come out of this ring on the spiral continuum and respond to it with a different energy. And, Einstein always pops in and says, brings in those brilliant words, but you can't solve a situation or a problem with the same energy that created it. So anytime we're in resistance or opposition to something,
we're feeling it.
We're responding and frequencies that are basically playing out to creating a grander opportunity for that to come back into play again.
Exactly. Yeah. See, I love that you brought this up, because it really brings us to realizing why, being aware of this information can support us, because it's coming up for a reason. But again, I think one of the things that I've seen play out, and it's important that we move beyond, is this idea of light versus dark, this war, and just giving energy to that idea is going to perpetuate that sense of separation, right? Where what we're trying to do is transcend that. So I also think it goes a long way in realizing that this trauma is stored in the collective consciousness. I think that it actually kind of frees up and liberates the individual, in a sense that they're able to recognize in themselves, well, the reason why I feel some of the things I feel is because, there's an underlying cause for that. There's an underlying cause that dates back even before my personal known lifetime. And that awareness allows for you to bring and shine the light of consciousness on these pains, these traumas, with greater awareness, and in doing so transmute them.
Yes, absolutely. And I must actually
don't say it.
Yes. No. And I would love to pause here, because what they, it's so hard to do so. It's so hard to pause, because what they want to really bring in, and maybe we can have like a continuation of this, is that all of what's taking place in the polarity of the global environment, of what's taking place here and now, is just yet another because of the spiral continuum that comes back around. Essentially, to simplify it and bring it into the simplest of terms, is we have these big patterns on an individual soul level, on a collective level, et cetera. And they keep coming around this spiral, right? And they'll be triggered by the collective consciousness or whatever, and planetary alignments to come back up. And it's how we respond as an individual and a collective to the rising and the triggering of this. How we respond to that is how the universe will then respond back. And if we respond to it in a similar fashion to where we did, let's say, during the time of the Atlantean fall of Atlantis, which is very much the same energy signatures in so many ways to what's taking place with this global pandemic, et cetera. If we respond in fear, if we respond in contraction, if we respond in attempts of greater separation, and those that are wanting that to take place and wanting us to stay on the spiral continuum are playing in all these masterful ways to feed this our ability to become confused, etc., then there's no judgment ever from the universe, yet we just continue to move on that same ring, if you will, of the spiral continuum until the next opportunity presents it, and we just choose to respond to it differently. And so that's where it comes into, every single day, I feel like, I don't know how many times a day, every collective that I work with, whether it's in sessions or just as I'm meditating in my own journey through the day, emphasize if there's one or two things to always come into awareness of and connect with in terms of their guidance is the ever, ever so important mastery of our present moment. Being in the present moment and being the neutral observer, coming out of a place of, coming into the center point and knowing that we are not our emotions, we are not our thoughts, we are this witnessing presence, this pure God essence that is here experiencing this. And so the more we're in this present moment and we're not diving into the wormholes and the timelines of the past and the future, then we can actually, it's only in that present moment awareness where we have access to the 0 point and where we can integrate the polarities and shift beyond that realm in the spiral continuum.
And that's what we're here to be into.
Yeah.
Okay, Brooklyn, I'll let you go, but not for long because we're going to get you back on. I tell you what, we went from that jump start point of me saying, let's have this recorded for an audience. We've gone for an hour and 15 minutes or so. So this, I think, in itself is more than valuable enough to be its own episode. So I'm going to put it out as just that. And you left off on a perfect note. I think you summed it all up. I always love how it comes back to the simple message.
Yes.
I think that's where the power lies. But again, I will say I want to get you back on because I think as we both can sense, we're only scratching the surface.
Oh, yeah. I would love to. Sign me up.
So we'll plan something. We'll plan something for very soon. But I want to thank you for your very first appearance on the Awaken podcast officially. And actually, before you go, anywhere you'd like to point anyone that hears this to if they'd like to connect with you?
Sure. Well, you mean in terms of like a website or?
Website. You do sessions as well. Maybe mention that.
Yes. Okay, sure. So I do have a website. It is brooklynrain.com, and that's Brooklyn spelled BROOKLIN, Rain RAYNE. And on that website, you can kind of navigate through the different things that I'm up to these days. And I'm also on Facebook. And I'm actually have just launched a course that is, yesterday was the first day, Thursday, October 22nd was the first day. And it will be offered for 4 more activations, 60-minute activations over the course of the next 4 weeks. And that will also be made available, if you couldn't make it live recording. And it's all about, surprise, activating your crystalline divine blueprint and integrating and connecting with more of who we are and why we're here. So I wasn't even planning on sharing that, but how serendipitous that you asked, and it's directly, in balance and harmonization with what came in to talk about today.
Not by any means a coincidence, I don't think.
Yeah.
And actually, that was already what was coming through for the title of the episode as well.
Oh,
so
sweet.
it all comes together here. But I do think we certainly drove home, I think, the importance of the simple message, the core of it all. Coming back to that I am present, being heart-centered, being in the intention of bringing forth greater love and joy into our experience. I do believe that there's a lot more that we'll have fun playing with and discussing. So, like I said, we're going to get you back on very, very soon. But I want to thank you again for your time, Brooklyn.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Senders, that's going to be all for this episode of the Awaken podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. I hope it invoked in you the degree of expansion that connecting with Brooklyn has supported me in. I hope this has served you in activating your original divine blueprint. We are coming into oneness, family, into a state of unity consciousness, into a fuller embodiment of the knowing that we are all one. We are all unique expressions of one source consciousness, and that we are infinite. We are infinite beings. We expand into this, we ascend into this individually, collectively, and in doing so, support the future of our species in transcending old patterns, residing in a higher expression of awareness, of harmony. This is the ascension journey, and this is what makes this moment in time that we're in so beautiful, this grand opportunity that we've been given. Senders, we are uniting and activating lightworkers in the Ascend Academy. If you've heard the call to serve and support the shift in consciousness, and you're ready to come together with others who wish to do the same, that's what we got going on in this initiative and co-creation. You can learn more and apply to join at academy.togetherweascend.com. One last little request of you all: if you've been enjoying the show and you'd like to support the creation of this content, please do head on over to iTunes to give us an honest review. You can find that at togetherweascend.com/iTunes. So anyways, Ascenders, again, that will be all for this one. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here on this planet at this time with us as we ascend together. So until next time, keep ascending.